Have you had a chance to see Toy Story 4? Loved it. Saw it the other day with my wife, our little mini date night. And I just thought it was the greatest movie because it was one of those movies that really spoke to where I am in life. And I think it really speaks to all of us where we are in life because it really is a good example, or really walked us through all 7 of our human needs, or our 7 developmental stages. You know what those are, right? Your 7 stages of life. Well, if you don't know what those 7 stages of life, then you got to stick around and learn about Toy Story 4 and how it applies to where you are in your life. Hi, I'm Brett, your favorite shrink, and thank you. Thank you so much for coming and joining us on The Gathering, because today we're going to talk about something really important. Really, a core concept to The Gathering is a consideration that you are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. If you're unhappy, if you're stuck, if you're feeling pain, it's not because you have some kind of problem or you're somehow dysfunctioning and dysfunctional. The problem is you're stuck. You're stuck in your life. We have to always be growing. That's when we are the happiest, when we are growing in our lives. And if you get stuck in any particular phase in your life, then you're going to be unhappy. And the only way to get you happy again is to get you moving. And yeah, there are some stages that are better than others, happier than others, more joyful than others. But it's just even the fact that we're moving and growing that really helps us to find our own inner peace, to find out to feel good, to create flow, I guess is the best way to say it. So I want to start off by talking about what are our different stages in life and how they flow, how they go from one to the next, and maybe help you see where you are by looking at the different characters that we see in Toy Story 4. Well, let me first off just go through quickly the 7 stages of life. The first need, the first stage we have is safety. Usually happens between 0 and 3. But, these needs happen all of our life. But really where that important stage is happening in our own development is 0 to 3 years old. We are in our mom's wombs, totally connected. We're not even a you or a me yet. We're just a we. We are perfectly connected. We don't even know that we exist outside of our own world. We're inside of our mom. And it just feels like it's so natural to be this connected. And then in a heartbeat, in a second, we're born. And we're dumped into this world totally disconnected from our mom, from everything that we ever knew. And it's pretty darn scary. And so what we're seeking in that first stage of development is some kind of connection again. We're looking at being connected because it's that connection that makes us safe. And safety is the first and most fundamental need that any of us have. If you're not safe right now, nothing else matters. Nothing. If this room is on fire, I'm going to run out. And I don't care if I'm butt-ass naked, I'm going to run out. None of my needs matter at all. Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Who cares? This room's on fire. I'm going to get out of here. Because that's our number one and most essential and critical need. 0 to 3 years old. Second most important need, or second developmental stage that happens in our lives, is that we start to focus on our stuff. Our needs, our wants, our desires, to start finding that sense of fulfillment. This starts about 3, it goes on to about 10. We're all about our stuff. It is this kind of idea that mom, she comes and goes. Dad comes and goes. And so we start learning to connect to our things. And it's those things like blankies and toys and binkies that give us a sense now of connection and security. It's fulfilling our desires, hunger, sleep, whatever our desire is at the moment. It's fulfilling those human basic desires that gives us a certain amount of comfort and protection. So instead of connecting to people as much, now in this stage, we're starting to connect to things, to objects for our security and for our feeling of well-being. Then we move from about 11 to 19 into a new stage. What are all teenagers about? Well, if you've ever seen a teenager, ever been a teenager, you know it's all about peers. It's all about our relationships. Now, it's not about desires. It's about being loved. And ultimately, this is where we start creating our sense of our own self and well-being. Am I lovable? And that's where we start connecting with people outside of our family group. So I connect to mom and dad, create safety, connect to my needs and desires to create kind of some object permanence within myself or sense of self. Then I start connecting to others, start connecting to my peers and relationships to create a sense of my own well-being. Am I loved? Am I lovable? Right? Then about 20s, 30s, something weird happens. Well, we start getting married. We start developing more significant and more intimate relationships. Some of us even start having families and kids. And there in this stage, it's not about being loved. All of a sudden, we start to evolve into a higher stage of loving. And now it's my belief that the energy dramatically changes. Instead of getting what I need to be okay, now I'm starting to feel okay by giving. It's loving, not being loved, that makes me feel good. And this is really, again, my belief as we go through these 7 stages where we start to feel the most happiness. The first 3 stages give us comfort, but the next start giving us connection. And it's that connection that starts to really fulfill us and give us our greatest happiness and later on, joy. So as I start to go through my 20s, 30s, 40s, I'm developing these significant relationships with people and hopefully even starting to develop a significant relationship to myself. Because as I move in from stage 4, loving others, I start moving into stage 5, which is I start to learn to love myself. I start to find my voice. I start to find my truth. Start to be able to express who I am. And that takes time to figure out who you are. And so usually it's about our 40s and 50s. We start to have our own voice. And it's also not a coincidence during those stages. Our kids are starting to grow up. That kind of meaning and purpose that created in those years is starting to wane. And now I need to start focusing on myself because I've been giving. And now I need to give, but instead give to myself. Learn to love myself. And that is our stage 5, learning how to love ourselves. Stage 4, learning how to love others as we start to develop families and significant relationships. 5, as I learn to start loving self. And again, it's not in an ego way of getting, but it's really learning how to give love and attention to who I am, an expression to who I am. Then we move up to stage 6. Stage 6 is where we start to see there's more out there. There's more out there to life than just me and my peers and my needs and wants, my desires. We start to see that life, really, ultimately, life is not about me. It's about starting to see something greater than myself. And then, final stage of life, seventh stage of life is we start to serve, give, love to things that are greater than just us, just greater than our own lifestyle, or even greater than our own desires, needs, and wants. Here we start serving humanity, working with domestic violence, poverty, AIDS, illnesses, helping, create water, clean water for people, housing for people, maybe even start to serve God, if that's where you are. We have to have something bigger than ourselves to really find the ultimate joy in life. It's serving something greater than me. Now, let's go back to our Toy Story 4 and begin to look at all the characters on their journey, because what you'll see in their journey is you'll see these different 7 stages and these different 7 needs. And hopefully you can even see yourself in there somewhere. So let's start at stage 1. Stage 1 is safety. Who do we see at stage 1 as we look at Toy Story 4? Well, the first person we see at stage 1 is Forky, right? Forky is a fork. A spork? Is that what that's called? It's a spoon and a fork, and it's made into a toy. And Forky thinks of himself as trash, and all he wants to do is go back to the trash, because to him, that is where safety is. The world is unsafe. The world, he doesn't feel like he belongs in it. He feels like he's trash, and he wants to just go back to the trash because that's where he is safe. There's some awesome shots of him laying in a trash can, just as content as could be, because that is where his safety is. He sees himself as trash, and that's where he wants to be. Now, in Forky, we've started to see also some growth in him. He started to grow through stage 2, and he started to develop a sense of himself as having worth, of being enough, as he started to come into relationships with the other toys around him. He started to develop a connection to those other toys and things around him. And as he starts to feel loved, right? So we start seeing him move from 1 to 2 to 3. And then ultimately at the end, I think it's even in the credits part of it, the clips, outtakes, and not outtakes, but credit scenes where he actually finds stage 4. He finds love because Bonnie creates a new toy. In first grade, she created him in kindergarten. Now in first grade, she creates a new toy and they fall in love because it's the same kind of deal. All right. And just side note, Rex, our friend T-Rex in the other previous Toy Stories, he was always that level 1, always afraid, always anxious, always feeling scared. He was always in level 1. And we don't see him as much in level 1 in these subsequent stories, or this subsequent story particularly, because Forky's playing that role of 1. 2. Phase 2, where we start looking at our needs, wants, and desires, and we start to create safety through our things. Well, 2 wonderful examples of that are the 2 humans that are in the story, that represent that age period. Remember, age periods from 4 to 10. Well, we have 2 people in the movie, Bonnie, the little girl herself, who's 5, because she's going to kindergarten, right? So I'm assuming she's about 5. And then we also have Harmony. Harmony is the granddaughter of the gal who owns the antique store. Well, both of those are in the same developmental stage. They're in the same developmental place. We saw Bonnie start to feel anxious. She had to go to kindergarten. And how did she cope with her anxiety? How did she cope with dealing with her fears? She created an object. She created a toy for her to bond to. That's where Forky came from. So she was creating comfort for herself in fulfilling her needs and wants and her desires in objects. She created an object that she could attach to. Objects have more permanence than people. So she created this object that she can create safety and worth with. Right? That's working. Well, Harmony did the same thing. Harmony, kind of came and visited her grandmother, and grandma had this beautiful, wonderful antique store filled with all kinds of stuff, junk. And Harmony's always grabbing junk, stuff, and playing with it. And again, that's how she's creating safety in her world. That's how she's dealing with life. She is looking to all the stuff, needs, and wants for her to feel okay about herself, right? Now, stage 3. Stage 3, again, is about being loved and being lovable, being a part of something, a family, a group. Well, we see most of our toys kind of in this developmental stage of feeling like wanting to belong to something. 2 people that are really important here is also Gabby. Gabby is really wanting to be loved. She's never, from day one, we hear in the story, she's always been defective. Her voice box hasn't functioned well, and so she's never had a child, never had that feeling of love and connection. And so that's what she's looking for, man. She is desperately searching for that connection. I need to feel loved. I need to feel a part of something. Those 2 annoying toys that came from the carnival, same thing, man, right? They're looking for somebody to come and love them. They need to be a part of a group. They feel desperate. They feel disconnected. And without a connection with something and somebody greater, all kinds of anxiety and neurosis, as we would call it. Then we start to move up to stage 4. In stage 4, what we're learning is we're starting to learn to love others. Well, one person that's really important that stands out in this, well, actually a couple people I think of. One is Dolly. Dolly is that Raggedy Ann doll of Bonnie's who's kind of playing the role that Woody used to play with Andy, where she's kind of in charge of all the other toys. Her job, as she feels it and sees it, is to help take care of them. And so she's really desperately trying to make sure everybody else is okay, and she's filling her needs and wants by loving others. Well, another 2 people that we can see in the same role are Bonnie's parents. Bonnie's parents are putting up with all the kind of weird quirks and anxieties and fears of their daughter because they love her, right? So they indulge her in her fears and anxieties and try to help comfort her. They are in that loving stage, as parents are, as parents should be. They're loving their daughter and trying to help her find happiness. And they're beginning in their life to find happiness by loving Bonnie. That's their greatest joy, right? Now we start moving up to stage 5. This is where it starts getting really cool, really interested. The main character that I see in this stage 5 is Bo Peep. Bo Peep, wow, she is really evolved in this movie. We see her at the very, very beginning. She's just a toy. And now, man, she's like independent. She knows who she is. She is clear on her own strengths. She's clear on her own desires. She's clear on what she wants and who she is. And she's running her own show. She don't need no kid no more. She's got herself. And yeah, she's connected to some of the other toys and almost in a caretaking kind of way, right? But she's really strong with who she is, strong in her own voice and identity. Then we move up to stage 6. Now, stage 6 is where we start to see something greater than ourselves. And one of the fun examples of this in Toy Story 4 was watching Buzz Lightyear's of evolution. In Buzz Lightyear's evolution, he started to understand his own inner voice, his intuition. And at first, he's mistaking the mechanical voice within him as his intuition. And it kind of works, because as we watch through the story, it's kind of funny to watch him do that, but it kind of works for him. And then by the end, oh man, when he's sitting up on the top canopy talking to Woody at the very end, and he says, Woody, she's going to be okay. And I'm not talking about, he says, and I'm talking about Bonnie. Man, that's a powerful moment when Woody is really starting to hear and embrace his own true inner voice. And he's able to speak truth that's far beyond, that's wise. That's a super wise truth, a truth from within. And that is where our intuition is. It's a voice that goes beyond our physical, beyond our current world. It's a voice that's kind of connected to something greater. The other person that's starting to see something greater is Woody. Woody, for his whole life, and this is kind of the whole story, it's been about taking care of the other toys. He's been in stage 4, right? Taking care and loving. And this is where the story is really about. And then he's slowly finding himself slipping out of that job. Bonnie doesn't need him anymore, not like she once did. And Woody is starting to find himself falling away, falling out of favor. But instead of falling into depression and collapsing into this self-pity, Woody starts seeing purpose. And his purpose is helping serve other people's growth. And the first person he's going to help grow is Forky. He thinks this is kind of like a replay of him and Andy, and he's trying to do this to connect with Bonnie again and get her favorite toy back. But as he begins to go through the story and evolve in his story, he starts to see it's really about helping Forky be something significant that he can see, that Forky's not trash. Forky has meaning to Bonnie, and Forky has meaning within himself. And Woody starts sacrificing safety, his needs and wants, his desires, even sacrificing being loved. He's sacrificing all the core human needs, psychological needs, because there's something greater he's starting to connect to. He's starting to move up to his 7th highest need, which is service. We see something greater than ourselves. We see purpose in our lives. And that's what Woody started to see. He started to see that he was losing this lower purpose and exchanging it for a higher purpose. And as he started to come into his higher purpose, we started seeing Bo Peep. She, at the very, very end, starts catching the picture. She's content being her own person, but she's won over by Woody transitioning up to this higher purpose. And she starts seeing that there's something greater than just her own satisfaction, getting her own world met. And she starts seeing and recognizing that life has to have purpose to it too, that she needs more purpose in her life. And she starts forsaking and giving up everything that she's had, her dreams, her wants, to serve a greater need, which is to serve purpose in other people, to serve a greater community than just her own tiny community. Great story. I think for me, what really meant the most for me is not that one stage is better than another. And I don't know what stage you're identifying with as we go through all these different characters. And it almost doesn't matter. It's not like, you've got to get to this stage. And if you're not at this stage of purpose and service, then your life is meaningless. No, not at all. The key to the movie that I saw is that every one of our characters were growing. We saw Forky grow. We saw Buzz Lightyear grow. We even saw Gabby. Oh my gosh, she grew. She went from level 2 striving for level 3, wanting to be wanted, but the way she was wanting to be wanted was by having a voice box, by getting a thing, right? But she evolved. She evolved from wanting to be wanted and loved to loving. She saw a little girl who was lost. She saw a little girl who was in need, and she's like, no, I need to love that little girl. That little girl needs my love. And that was really her evolution through the story, was moving up into that 4th stage for her, learning how to love others. Because up until then, it was all about herself. So the takeaway I got from that movie was not that one stage is better than another stage, that wherever you are isn't bad and you need to go someplace good. The purpose, the story meant to me that we need to be growing. For us to be happy, we need to be moving. And yeah, some stages are better than others, okay. But it's really us growing from stage to stage that brings us joy and happiness as well. And that's what I want to encourage you to be doing. I want to hear in your comments below, where do you see yourself developmentally? Where do you see yourself through these 7 stages? And where do you see yourself needing and wanting to grow? Thank you so much for watching. And again, I want to ask you and encourage you, join our gathering. Share your comments. And let's do this together, because that's really the ultimate story of Toy Story 4, was that the only way, the best way to do this is together. We can't do it alone. We need each other. So join the gathering and grow. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm Brett, your favorite shrink, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.